Now that we've prepared the data set within that users file, we're now getting on to the more exciting part of actually putting this all together so it works. So we're going to be using typeahead.js. This is from Twitter. We're going to go ahead and just download it as a raw file and copy it over. But if you are using some kind of package manager like Bower, you can go ahead and install this via Bower if you want. In our case, though, we'll skip that and we'll just download it as normal. So we want to download this first of all. I'm basically just going to copy and paste this into a file. We need a directory for JavaScript, so I'm going to create a directory in here, and I'm going to create a new file called typeahead.js and just paste that in there. So we've now got that ready to go. Let's just start to build up our markup here on our page. So I'm just going to say user search as the title. And we need to pull in jQuery as well because this plugin does depend on jQuery. So let's start out by including this. So we'll create some script tags with a source. Now I'm going to pull in jQuery from Google hosted libraries. Just go ahead and Google for that and you'll find you'll be able to pull jQuery down from Google CDN. It's just a lot easier to pull in. So we'll just paste this in here. And what we're now going to do is pull in that typeahead.js file as well. So let's do this now. And we'll say js/typeahead.js. Okay. So lastly, then we want a sort of global JavaScript file, I guess, that we're just going to write all our JavaScript in. So I'm going to put that in global.js in the JS folder. So let's also create that now so we're ready to use the plugin. So global.js. So what we need to do is decide about how this form is going to look, how this is going to look inside of our markup. So I'm just going to create a form here with a get action, a get method, and the action is going to just come back to this page. Obviously, depending on your requirements, this can submit anywhere you want. So I'm going to create an input type with text, and the name of this is going to be user, and the ID is going to be users. This ID is how we're going to pick this up with JavaScript and actually activate the plugin. And what we'll then do is we'll create an input type of submit, and we'll give this a value of go. Doesn't really matter too much. So at the moment then on our page, if we just head over to the index file, we've just got the following. So we're going to be styling this up just a little bit as well because we do need to apply some styles to the plugin for it to render properly, or it's just going to look a little bit funny. So once we've got the markup then, let's just include a link to a style sheet. This is just going to be a style sheet of our own. So let's create a new folder called CSS, and then inside of here, let's create a new file called global.css. So all of our styles can go in here, and we'll link this to global.css up here. So what we're going to do now is actually look at implementing the plugin, and then we'll go on to actually styling this up to make it look good. So what we need to do is in global.js, we need to actually start using this. The plugin's already loaded onto our page, so we can just start writing code basically to make this work. So I'm going to use document ready with jQuery once the DOM is loaded. And inside of here, we're actually going to be using something called Bloodhound, which is part of Typeahead. And this basically allows us to perform searches on the front end of the data set that we get back. So this is actually going to allow us to send a request to this remote file, passing in the query, and the query being what the user's typing, and that will bring back the data, and that will make a smart search on the data that we're working with. So we're only going to be looking at a very basic example, but this should get you going. And if you want to go ahead and look at the Bloodhound docs, they are available, so you can go ahead and read about the features and the usage of this. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do then is create a variable called users, and that's going to be a new Bloodhound. And inside of here we have an object with our different options. So we have a datum tokenizer, which is required. And this is going to be Bloodhound tokenizers object white space. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to say value. This is going to be username because that's what we are searching on. So we're now going to create, or we're going to define the property query tokenizer. and that's going to be a bloodhound, again, tokenizers, white space. So, I mean, you can read more about these in the documentation as well, but both of these are actually required. So now we need to define where the remote data is coming from, or at least where we're querying to get this. So we know that we're querying users.php, but we need to tell Bloodhound where the query needs to be placed inside of the URL. So in this case, it's just going to be query, and then we use a query placeholder like this. So this will allow us to, when we start searching, so when we type A, this will go ahead, and once we set this up with the actual plugin, it's going to make a request to this file, with the query being whatever we've typed just in here. So that's pretty straightforward. So we now need to initialize that. So we say users.initialize, and there we go. So we've not actually used the plugin yet. So everything that we're doing here, let's just bring up our developer tools so we can keep an eye on any problems that occur. We're not actually doing much. Nothing's actually going to happen when we start searching in here. The reason that these are coming up is because I have autocomplete on. So I guess just for the sake of this, let's turn autocomplete off, just so that doesn't get in the way. There we go. So nothing's happening, as I said. Now we actually need to use the type ahead plugin, and we're going to pass in this users, and we'll use the we're going to call an adapter method to make sure that this actually integrates with the type ahead plugin. So we're going to select users. Remember, this is the ID of this field here, just here, and we're going to call type ahead on that. Now we can pass in some options. Now there are a few options. You can go ahead and read up on these in the documentation, but the first thing we want is a hint to be true. So this is going to hint to us basically inside of the actual input itself. Remember when we looked at the introduction, we saw as we typed it just gave us a hint for the maybe top record or something like that. We also want to turn highlighting on. This is going to highlight in bold. As you type, the list will sort of highlight each field depending on what you've typed, and we'll see that in action in a moment if that doesn't make too much sense. And I'm also going to set a minimum length. This is quite important. If, for example, you don't want users to type A and then see a list of all records beginning with A, you can set this to trigger only when the amount typed is of a certain length. That's really, really important. So as the second argument to this, we can pass in the sort of data set that we're bringing in. So the name of this data set is going to be users. The display key is going to be username. Now what the display key does is from our actual data set, if I just duplicate this and we go back over to users and query for something, it's basically what shows in the input dropdown as you search. So if, for example, you wanted, there was some kind of first name here, and you wanted to search on username and first name, but you wanted to show the first name, then you could say first name. It just really depends what's in your data set. But for now, because we've only got a username, which is the only real useful thing we want to display, we'll keep it as username. And now, more importantly, we need to define the source. So this is users, as we defined up here with Bloodhound, and we use the adapter to pull in and sort of link these both together. So now this should work. So let's go ahead and refresh. That's how sort of easy it is. So as I start to type, you can see we're getting a list of them records. So remember, with the options, the hint is basically this here that you can see auto completing in the actual input field itself. The highlight here is as I type, you can see that these parts here are a little bit bold, so it just helps the user sort of focus on what they're doing. And obviously the minimum length is pretty obvious. When I type A, we're not getting a list. When I type L, we start to get a list. So you can configure that how you want. So this is actually working, and it works pretty well. So if I was to type this, I can come down and select any of these that are in the list. I can hit enter to choose the one that I want. If I'm coming along, say typing this, we can come down and hit enter on that, and that will automatically select that one for us. So it's pretty well working, and it's so easy to integrate. So this is really all we need. Now that we've got that going, we want to actually style this up so it looks fairly decent. And then from that, you can go ahead and change our basic styles to suit your website theme. And that was how easy it is to get our autocomplete working on our drop down. And we'll go ahead and style it next.